Hello and welcome back to my shop. My name is George and I'm coming to you from Chelsea, Quebec. Today's video is on 3D printing, but it's about making a device for shop storage. It is for storage of small parts useful in the shop. So if you have a wood shop and you're thinking about getting a 3D printer, or you already have a 3D printer and you'd like to see something about storage, stick around. Russ, you have to stay put because this is also an answer to your marble challenge of some time ago. If you recall, I wrote you a note saying that I would respond to your challenge to use marbles to make something useful in the shop. And you'd hear from me in a couple of weeks, and that was 2 years ago, so here I am. So if you've been following this channel for a little while, you know that I like to 3D print, especially 3D printing small marking tools for the wood shop. And if you know anything about 3D printing, you know that we accumulate things like this. So these are empty spools that used to contain filament. You use it up. The spools are really good quality, and some of us have a hard time throwing them out. So that's where something like this comes into play. Now let me talk about Russ's part first, and then I'll talk a little bit more in detail about the parts cabinet that this spool tower is. Now, Russ, your challenge was to put marbles to work in the shop. You wanted something more or less practical to be made with marbles. You weren't interested in seeing any marble madness machines. So I did this. Now it's not too imaginative, but it's what we call a lazy Susan. Now I don't know why they call it a lazy Susan. If anything, they should call it a fat lazy Stephen, because if anything, he's the one who's too lazy to get up and go to the other side of the table to get the mustard. So never mind that. So you get a really nice rolling around that takes place with this. There are 3 parts to it. There's an upper and lower race, so a U-shaped channel that runs around this ring. Same thing on the bottom. The only difference between the two, one has a pin, the other one has a hole, and that helps keep them aligned. There's a cage that contains the marbles. Now, the real treat to 3D printing is that you can very easily do things that are difficult, somewhat difficult to do with other means. Specifically, what I'm thinking about here is the shape of the interior of these marble holders. That shape was actually defined to be spherical, right? So there's a nice round enclosure, a little bit larger than the diameter of the marbles, and the marbles just snap in and hold their place. So Russ, that was my contribution to the marble challenge that you issued some 2 years ago or so. The rest of this is a tower of parts cabinets. The cabinets occupy a quarter of the circle each. They swing open, so they're hinged at one end. Some of them have smaller compartments within. Let's see if we can find some. Yeah, here's one for instance. So the smaller compartments can be used for keeping smaller parts, and they slip right out. So you've got a collection of small screws that you want to work with at the bench. You can just bring them over and work with them right there, and return them when you're done with them. Some cabinets don't have any smaller compartments. Again, we'll search for one that doesn't. Here's one, and all of the drawers can just be removed outright. So if you have large screws, for instance, that completely fill up the big compartment, you can bring that over to the bench and work with it there. The slots over here are in the front, and what that does is it makes it easy to slip the drawer back in, and then when it's closed it doesn't slip out. These things are pretty slick. I had an earlier version without hinges, and the slightest tilt would let the drawer slide out, so that didn't work very well. So there it is, a 3D printed carousel parts cabinet that ends up making good use of spools that, well, like I said, I had a hard time throwing them away. The idea of doing this is far from original. In other words, it's not mine. There are many versions of this already published on the internet. So this is just one little variation of them. Now, the ideal parts cabinet would be made using a clear plastic. And I do have some transparent clear, as it's called, but it comes out way too milky for you to see through. So yeah, the best would be is if you could just see through the part fronts to see what was inside the cabinet. Second best will be to create some tags that are hooked onto the finger purchase. So they would hang here, and then there would be a larger placard underneath that would say what was inside. Where that's really useful is when you have several sizes of screw. So you would have either an F or an R followed by the dimensions of the screw. So maybe you think the F and the R stand for Phillips and Robertson, but no, I don't use Phillips, so there's no need to label them. I use only Robertson, and therefore there's no need to label them either. No, the F and the R stand for flat and round head. Everything is Robertson. Art, I don't buy merch, but when I saw this design, I couldn't help myself. Thank you so much for making it available. So did any kind of thinking go into the colors that I chose? Yeah, a little bit. The bottom three rows have colors that more or less suit each other or go well together. So you can see here the middle row has a light green and a dark green, two shades of gray down here in the second one up, and the very bottom one cream and light brown. So they go well together, but the three as a combination is a little jarring. What about the top two? Well, red and white for a patriot. The colors of the Canadian flag. The second one, blue and white. The colors of the province that I was born in and continue to live in. Also, the colors of the Greek flag, which says something to my heritage. And maybe there's some other countries that use this color scheme. Keith, thanks so much for sticking it through till here. I hope you found the video interesting. Well, if you're still here, obviously you found at least it was worth sleeping through, or maybe you caught something interesting. So bye from me, but before I go, don't forget, make a little bit of time for your passion, and if you can share it, that's even better. Bye from me for now. I hope that was taping.